Hey, state mates and fellow Gen Z babies, get ready for the tea, the truth, and the tales. This is Aliyah.
This is Sean.
And this is Janema. And welcome to
Kwentong
Kwentong State
State
U,
U, a
a
Gen
Gen
Z's
Z's
diary.
diary, where we delve into academic pursuits, young adulthood, and Gen Z concerns, one kwento at a time.
So last episode uh we talked about if our students really learning or are we just aiming for high grades, and the three of us have our different opinions about that topic. For today's video, we are going to talk about
Generation Fit Quest, where we dive into what it means to fit into modern society from a youth perspective. We're going to take a closer look at the pressures and choices young people face when it comes to fitting in. We're exploring topics around identity, belonging, social norms, and cultural expectations that shape how today's generation define themselves. First, let's talk about conformity. In a world where everyone's connected, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to fit in, especially with social media pushing us to look, act, and think in a certain way. Everyone's got their highlight reel online, and it's easy to feel like you're not measuring up. It's like there's this unwritten rule book on how to be fit for society, whether it's the perfect body image, the ideal career path, or even how to handle relationships. But here's the thing, conforming to these expectations doesn't always lead to happiness, does it?
I doubt about it because when you try to fit in the society where there's a social norms, different social norms, it actually encourages individual encourages a social growth of an individual where it actually helps them to build a meaningful relationship in their community. And also it was like when you fit in the society or the social norms or the standards, it actually like it feel it
makes you
fi-
feel better
makes
or
yeah, it makes an individual more connected with each other.
However, even if it does make them connected with each other individuals get pressured to be in this standard, in this social norms, because others may not be actually who they are just because of these standards and of these social norms. They pretend to be someone else, not them themselves, because of these social norms they try to reach to connect with others.
Well, if you fit in the society of a society standards, it actually doesn't like mean totally mean to change yourself to like whatever that society standard is. You will totally change yourself. You should like balance yourself because it actually um on the other side it's actually um help an individual to find itself or grow more. Like what if that standard of the new generation standard actually more on suit more on individual and actually find him or herself more on that part, like it just helps them to discover themselves.
I agree with you in some point because I have known people that um, build their confidence in trying to submit to these social norms. However, when they do this and it gets too much, it burns them and it pressures them that to the point that it's not healthy anymore for them by reaching, for example, whenever they can't reach these social norms that was set by the society, they get pressured and they blame themselves for not reaching those standards, them, which causes them to be unhealthy.
Well, don't you think on some part like it's actually an individual's problem for thinking that way because the society that doesn't push them to really change totally than into different individual, like they,
Yes,
they just think about it of themselves.
Yes, the society doesn't really push them. However, the social media do. It's not it's it's some part an individual's problem, but when you seem to feel like you're not fitting in the society, you feel left out. So if they feel left out, they try to reach it. However, as I said, it's unhealthy. I think that it's some part of it is their problem because they think that way. But I think we have to think on the to see on the other perspective that social media is pressuring them to be fitting in and to change themselves because of these standards.
Yeah, we often view the social media as the social media negatively because it it affects an individual's it affects how an individual think. But the social media, when used positively or correctly, it actually makes an individual more on be open-minded and be aware of the surroundings and the community, the trends, so they can cope up with it positively. Like, like social media can change their perspectives about this society standards.
Let's talk about the growing disconnect between our online and offline selves. The virtual world allows us to create versions of ourselves that can be totally different from who we are in person. That is how social media shapes us. This is where it gets tricky. Social media has become a double edged sword. On one hand, it helps us connect, share experiences, and express ourselves. On the other hand, it creates this sense of disconnection from reality where we start to question who we really are when we're constantly trying to project something we're not. And that leads to confusion. Who are we really? The person we are online or the person we are in the real world?
I agree with what Miss Aliyah said because having two personas in different platforms, for example in social media and in person, your friends in social media will have a different approach to you because you are having a different person in online, and when they meet you in person they're like, you're not like that in social media, you're very different from what you are in social media and online. So I agree with what Miss Aliyah said.
Well, on some people, they view social media negatively, especially on how it shapes an individual's mindset. But on some thoughts, actually, like I said, social media, when used correctly and positively, it helps an individual to be more on the fit in this generation standard or on social norms, since it helps them to be have a two identity, different on social media and different on physical life, which is, good thing of to be fit in this generation standard or social norms.
However, this two identity doesn't really make them authentic in a real world situation. I mean, think about it. How many times have you posted a photo that you've edited just to get a few more likes? Or maybe you followed the trend even though you didn't really care about it. We're constantly bombarded by messages that tells us who we should be. But the thing is, chasing these ideals doesn't always lead to fulfillment. Instead, it can lead to self-doubt and insecurity. If your life looks nothing like the perfect version online that you post in social media, you might feel like you're missing something. Think about influencers promoting a certain body type or lifestyle, which also pressures these people to be like that. They make it look effortless, right? But behind the scenes, many are struggling with their mental health, body image issues, and the pressures to stay relevant. And that's the dark side of this pursuit. chasing a dream that isn't even real.
I mean, those influencers are just expressing themselves, but by posting online. But it doesn't mean that everyone should follow on the trends. But if they just feel like, then they should just follow. If they feel like like they think about themselves on similarly with the influencers they saw online.
They are labeled as influencers even though in the past generations this label does not exist, but as labeled as influencers, they influence people. So when they influence people, they are like the models of these viewers of this society. So even though they do not really need to follow these influencers, however they are influenced to follow these people, and that makes them pressured um, to be like those people that they see online.
Yes, they are called influencers to influence everybody. But like on my side, those influencers I've seen online doesn't actually influence me because it actually depends on people's mindset on, oh, is it a good thing that they're advertising or something about their content? Is it a good thing for me to follow about it? And then if not, then I will just disregard about it. And then if there's another content of and other influencers seems like right for me, then that's the time that I will try or I will copy or mimic or something like that. That's an influencer's content like that.
I I agree with you at that point that we should know what we should follow or be influenced with. However, in a Gen Z's perspective, we are dominated by social media, and and we are tend to be vulnerable by this influence that we tend to be what we tend to follow, even though at some point at the back of our minds it's not right anymore.
So you're saying is that if a certain person isn't like following a standard or doing for example doing a viral video, you're saying they're like KJ or no?
I'm not I do not say that they're KJ, but if you think about it at a Gen Z perspective or a social or the society now, they are viewed as KJ if they are asked to do this and that, but they do not follow because it's the standard to, if there's a trend, you have to follow because it's a trend.
But since it's a trend, doesn't fully mean to follow completely because it depends on people because they have their own decisions. But those, trends actually just help them to be or discover themselves more, but doesn't completely make them to fade their individuality before the trend starts.
So, so what Miss Junema is saying that is that it depends on a person's mindset or thinking for them not to be persuaded easily by societal and social media norms. And what Miss Aliyah is saying is that they are still vulnerable in being influenced by social media and our societal norms in this generation.
Now let's talk about something even more serious: mental health. The expectations to look good, do well in school, get into college, and secure the perfect job are enough to drive anyone crazy. But for young people today, it's even worse because we're facing this constant pressure from all sides. Social media doesn't help. You've got filters, fake perfection, and endless comparison, but the worst part, it's all linked to our self-worth. If we don't meet these expectations, we start to feel like we're not enough. Think about the rise in mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and stress among young people are at an all-time ah.
I and
One, two, three. Think about the rise in mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and stress among young people are at an all-time high. And the worst part is that many of us still feel like we need to hide our struggles to avoid judgment. So where do we turn? How do we find balance?
By balance you mean like how to apply this new generation standards?
I mean by balance is how do we balance to fit in these standards but
without
without having to be in those um, mental health issues like anxiety or depression. By balance, I mean how to fit in these standards but by being yourself.
Well, by fitting in, I believe it means, for me, doesn't actually fitting in doesn't mean that to, you know, fit totally in this society, but those trends that rising in this generation, in these times, just helps an individual to, like I said, to discover themselves more, and to helps them improve, because this fitting in this generation is just a pathway to discovering identity of individuals, because it since fitting in, there's a various cultures existing, so it helps them to which of these cultures or standards feels feels more like feels right for them to, apply themselves, but doesn't totally makes them forget about their previous self, but doesn't change themselves totally, but just helps them improve more and discover themselves better, or have them a growth in themselves.
I agree with the mental health issues in fitting in our society. I don't know if you know Ryan's Toy Review. He is a YouTuber, a child star. He started making videos since he was 5 years
5 years
old,
old, yes, I
something
know.
like that. And until now, he's still doing those kind of videos, like bataot videos, still reviewing toys and playing with toys, even though I think he's already grade 8, grade 9 now because of his parents' expectations and them wanting to fit a Ryan in our society for like because they think that Ryan's viewers are still like kids
Kids.
some or still having fun watching his videos. The kid has a beard already, but he's still playing with toys and that for and I think that's one of those affecting mental health because of different expectations from different people in this society.
Well, fitting in, or this generation's culture, standards, and social norm doesn't actually mm, hinders individual for them to express themselves, because we still have our freedom, and if you belong to a group, or you try to be fit in a group, is just makes people feel belonging, and this shared experiences, if you try to be fit in this generation, is actually makes people to feel more united, have them a unity with each other.
But what about those who don't fit into this healthy mold? The ones who struggle to fit society's narrow definitions of beauty or fitness. The pressure to look a certain way can destroy someone's self-esteem. So, as you said earlier, that it can build someone's confidence, but at some point when people reach this point that they do not fit into the healthy part, then it can really mess up their mental health and also their physical health.
Well, those mental health, I for me, I think it's just depends on how people adapt to a change. So that's why they are affected by it. But if you try to befit and understand more this new generations, I mean this new generations or these generations like social norms existing, you won't feel to be left out because if you just try to be more understanding and be more open-minded, it will feel you more to be belong in that generation or in a group.
Yeah, so these people may try to be open-minded or may try to look at in a different perspective and then understand the standards. However, if they trying to understand this and as you said, not to be left out in doing this, some people cannot adjust well to these standards. That's why it's not healthy for some people. So how do we draw the the line that when to stop?
You mentioned earlier balance, right? So if someone learned how to balance their personal identity while still embedding this I mean new standards or the social norms that existing, it makes an individual to build resilience and self-awareness of themselves and also in their surroundings or in the society.
So, as I think in what you're saying, you're trying to say that these individuals should submit to these standards, to these social norms, to be confident and to fit in with people. But I I really think that these people should not submit to these standards because why do we set these standards? um we are the same people. We shouldn't label someone as this and that, but we should really feel like free to express ourselves even though we do not submit to these standards. We should not feel left out because we did not submit to the social norms and standards.
I I don't mean to fully submit yourself, but just to apply some of this generation standards and social norm to yourself to be fully better or more like I don't totally mean that to fully submit yourself in this generation standards or social norm, but what I mean is just apply some of it to yourself to have you a develop or discover more
Improve.
about yourself. Yeah, improve something like that.
In that, I agree if that's how it is. But I think that they can improve and better themselves even when not submitting to the standards. If they can freely express themselves without being judged, without being called KJs or killjoys, or without being labeled as someone like being left out, I think they can improve and better themselves without submitting to the social norms and social standards.
Well, how can individual totally improve themselves or have a growth on themselves if they are not exposed in this generation standards? they are still stuck on a previous social norms or cultures. Like if they are not exposed, then it how can make it themselves realize that, oh, I can still improve something in this side, in this, with this, with the help of this generation standard.
I think that I'm not meaning it to them being stuck by the past generation standards. I'm just saying that they are not obliged to submit to the standards. Yes, they are already being exposed to these standards. However, and as you said, being exposed to these standards is can help them discover themselves more. And yes, they are really being exposed to these standards now. But being exposed may make them realize something about themselves, and with that, it doesn't mean that they have to submit. They are already exposed. They don't have to follow these standards. This being exposed may already help them in improving and bettering themselves and make them realize that, oh, I can be like this and like that, but and freely express themselves. They can be exposed, but I'm saying here that they can be exposed because it cannot be dili siya malikayan, but I think that they do not really have to submit to the standards, and that's what really my point here.
Okay, I get your point, but I just want to add something. Fitting in with just I mentioned it that it makes people feel connected if you try to understand, but not really, if not really like fitting in without actually understanding the whole thing. But with understanding this, how can it affect you in your, how can it can improve you, and it can also like creates a more opportunity to to be connected, or be, or have a relationship, meaningful relationship with everybody, especially the youth or the Gen Zs, where they grow in this, I mean we grow in this generation standards completely different from people on others generation, people's other generation.
Malikayan.
So the three of us are talking about Generation Fit Quest and its different approach on each people, and the conforming social media expectations and mental health effects of it. And Miss Junema over here is talking about um it talks about that it depends on a person's mindset or thinking for them to be influenced by certain influencers. And Miss Aliyah is talking about they are still vulnerable by in being influenced and having authenticity. Who is the real because you have two personas, the social media and the 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 person in real life, and the conforming one is trying to fit in because of influencing, or because of improving yourself or being better, at the same time being an outcast because you are not fit in this society. And lastly is what's the last?
Mental health. Mental health.
Lastly is mental health. Because of this social media, because of this standards and norms that we in this generation we are always talking about, there are different effects for this in different persons. For example, stress, of course, stress and having bad vibes, or you're not good with this, so meaning you're going to be stressed, depressed, and you're not going to have any improvements. And in the other hand, some people are, by this social media or standards, they are improving themselves and building up confidence because of what the society is talking about.
And that is it for today's episode. Once again, this is Aliyah.
This is Sean.
And this is Junema.
And this is Kwentong State U, a Gen Z's Diary. Stay tuned for our next episode.
Bye.
Ay, thank you Lord. Oh my
Saan?
God.